video on that. There, it's coming back. Let me go ahead and the video can catch up. The first thing I'll talk about, get right to the meat of it, is the lease term. And right now, we are proposing the lease term initially be for 25 years. Now, it can have whatever language to extend it, but starting in 25 years. That's based a little bit on prior conversation I think you've had, and it is negotiable. So if you feel like that's not sufficient, we want to talk about that, we can talk about every aspect of this, so please keep that in mind.
I was just going to ask if we could maybe flip off another row of lights. It might help a little bit with the picture quality of it.
It's a good question. I don't know if we can do that.
Can't do one there.
Here we go. Martha's gonna try. We still have a little technical difficulty. I'm going to keep going. Mine's more narrative based anyway. So the lease term initially 25 years, subject to negotiation, and also to various renewal terms. We're not getting that. We're trying to stay at a high level at this point and see how we match up. Lease effective date. We're really optimistic to think that if we can come to terms, we'd like the lease effective date to be sometime between the time that the fair is completed this year and the end of the year. We think that fits, because why do anything that would disrupt this fair? We don't want to do that. The park use is proposed to be, for the most part, the same that's included in the current 2009 Kenwood Park lease, with the exception of the location for the Tri-Rivers Fair Outdoor Rodeo Arena events, and you'll see a lot more on that here in just a moment. The physical parkland lease area, the physical land area is generally the same as included also in the 2009 lease, with the exception of the arena and arena staging areas, and you're familiar with those two areas. Those are in the lease proposed to be retained by the city, and we know that's one of the big question issues, so we recognize that. The proposal for the future land use area is included in the park conceptual master plan, and that will be presented by HDR, and you'll be able to see that visually and be able to ask questions, and they can provide better insight into the planning and the input they had. So I'll let them do that, not steal the thunder. The physical park site building improvements by both parties. This is included also in the master plan that will be presented by HDR here in just a few minutes. The continuation of the Tri-Rivers Fair, we felt it was important to assert. We know that's a very, very important thing for you, for the residents of the county, and really for the region. So we wanted to assert that it's our intent to accommodate and support that for the full lease term, and however long in the future that could be. We understand the importance and agree with that. I want to talk about the county's use of the Tony's Pizza Event Center. The current lease, the 2009 lease, allows for the use of the facility for 12 consecutive days with some advance scheduling notice. The rent is currently set to the operational costs of the facility unless an admission charge is utilized. If there's an admission charge activity, then in that case the lease says the rent is based on the established facility rental rates. In the proposed lease, and this is important because as I mentioned, we in our proposal are looking to retain the property where the current rodeo arena is for other recreational parking and other uses. And so obviously the first question is well, what happens with the fair activities? And that's a big question. We get that. And so what we're proposing is those activities can come into the Tony's Pizza Event Center. You can bring dirt, you can do road course rodeos, you've seen that. You can do demolition derbies and even combine demolition derbies. Really anything you can get to the big door, you can do. And we've seen that. We've actually seen it as close as Topeka in their Expo facility. And so they've already shown us you can accommodate those things. So we're saying those things can come in. We're fine with that. We'll have to still work out details with Spectra, who manages that facility on the city's behalf, but we're willing to do that. We can do those activities. You still have your draft horse show. And really, any other activities, if you may have thoughts of other activities you'd want to put on the list, that's perfectly fine. And if there are activities we don't think of today that we think of in the future, we can agree on those in the future. So really anything that building can handle could potentially be considered as activities for the fair if the fair board and you should wish to do that, and we can accommodate those in there. So that's our intent, to try to do that for the long term. What we'd like to do is as I mentioned, all those activities, we mentioned rodeo, demolition derby, combine, and anything else. So I think that's really, really important that we are able to do that, because what we don't want to do is provide a situation in which you don't have space or room for those activities and it affects the fair. We don't want to do that. Now, the rent part is really important because as you first look at that, you say, well, okay, we get that, and that might be nice space, but there's a cost to that, and we know it's a conference center, it's a marina, and there's a cost to using that, and how's that going to be addressed? And so, generally, we would, at this point, apply the same concept that's in the lease today, because we also have an agreement with Spectra, and we need to honor that at this point in time. Now, at some point, if we, when we get to the point of renegotiating that, if there's a need to change that, we can certainly look at that. But what we're saying is we recognize from your perspective, and the Fair Board's perspective, you can't go into a situation where even if you accommodate those activities, you go into a hole financially. So what we're saying is we will make sure that won't happen. We'll work with your staff and whomever else we need to establish kind of a benchmark to know where your break-even point is with that. And also, in essence, that we know that there's probably some form of a positive in the fair at the end of the year, and how these activities affect that, to make sure you don't go backwards in any way. We don't want you operationally to go backwards in any way. We really want just the opposite. We want you to be able to do more and to be more successful in there.